Luis Jamiltón did not join Ferrari to play second fiddle. But what if that was the plan all along? Insiders now claim that Ferrari's top engineers have been quietly favoring Leclerc with premium upgrades and faster technical responses, while deliberately stalling or even sidelining Jamilton's input. The recent inconsistencies in the SF-veinticinco may not be due to the car's design flaws, but rather a strategic internal sabotage masked as technical complications. And now, with Jamiltón reportedly gathering his own data, cross-checking team figures, and preparing to speak publicly, one has to ask, is the legendary driver about to expose the most politically charged cover-up Ferrari has faced in a decade? If so, the consequences could shake Maranello to its core and rewrite how power truly operates behind the red curtain. When Luis Jamiltón stepped out of the garage after yet another underwhelming run in the SF-veinticinco, the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Gone was the composed, diplomatic figure fans have come to recognize. In his place stood a driver radiating frustration and disbelief. In a candid conversation that quickly leaked through team insiders, Jamiltón did not hold back. He described the SF-veinticinco as unbalanced, unstable, and inexplicably slow in critical zones. Words that stunned not just fans but also senior figures within Ferrari. It was the first time Jamiltón publicly questioned the machinery he had been handed since joining the team, and the fallout was immediate. What triggered this outburst was not just the car's performance, but the pattern behind it. According to engineers close to the project, Jamiltón has been raising concerns for weeks, flagging irregularities in downforce distribution, inconsistency in power delivery, and even unexplained discrepancies in tire degradation when compared to his teammate Leclerc. These issues, he claimed, were not isolated incidents but systemic flaws ignored or dismissed by top management. The breaking point came after a private debrief in which data from both cars was allegedly withheld from his side of the garage, a move Jamiltón interpreted as deliberate and deeply disrespectful. What makes this situation even more shocking is that independent telemetry analysts from respected outlets have begun to corroborate Jamilton's claims. Several publications, including Automotor UND Sport and The Race, have reported curious variances in the aerodynamic mapping of the two Ferrari cars during practice sessions. When overlaid, the differences in performance do not align with driver input or environmental conditions, raising serious questions about whether Jamiltón is being given a fair platform to compete internally. These discrepancies have sparked outrage across social media, with the hashtag #JusticeForLuis trending worldwide. As the controversy surrounding Luis Jamiltón's critique of the SF-veinticinco deepened, new layers of complexity began to emerge from within the Ferrari organization. Sources with access to internal meetings revealed that tension between Jamiltón and key engineering personnel has been building for months. While publicly the team maintains a facade of unity, behind closed doors, strategic decisions and technical priorities have allegedly leaned heavily in favor of Leclerc. One insider even stated, "It is clear where the wind blows. The development direction always favors the feedback from Leclerc's side, while Luis often receives generic setups that do not match his driving style." This revelation paints a troubling picture of favoritism in what is supposed to be a team built on equality. Adding fuel to the fire, a recent report by Motorsport Italia suggested that the latest upgrade package, intended to improve mid-corner stability, was calibrated based almost entirely on data collected from Leclerc's car. Jamiltón, who had requested a different aerodynamic configuration weeks prior, was not only ignored but reportedly denied the parts altogether during the most recent internal test. The justification given was a supply chain delay. Yet multiple observers noted that Leclerc had no issue receiving full access to the same components. If true, this would not only compromise competitive integrity, but could also explain the rising friction in radio communications between Jamiltón and his engineer. What stands out most in this saga is Jamilton's decision to speak out. Throughout his career, he has been known for his careful diplomacy, even in the face of adversity. For him to now label the SF-veinticinco as one of the most frustrating cars I have ever driven suggests that the situation has reached a critical threshold. It is not just about handling characteristics or lap times anymore. It is about trust, transparency, and respect within one of the most historic teams in the sport. As one former team principal anonymously put it, when a driver of Jamilton's caliber starts to openly question the car, it is no longer a performance issue. It is a political one. In the days following Luis Jamiltón's striking comments about the SF-veinticinco, a quiet reckoning began to unfold within Ferrari. Though no official statement was released, internal sources confirmed that an emergency technical review was conducted to address the growing storm, both within the garage and in the public eye. What the review revealed only deepened the problem. The SF-veinticinco's rear aerodynamic balance was indeed more suited to Leclerc's corner entry style, and modifications that could bring it in line with Jamilton's preferences had been deprioritized during the development phase. This technical bias, though never explicitly acknowledged, matched what Jamilton had been warning about for months. More disturbingly, a review of internal feedback logs showed that Jamilton's post-session notes, known in the paddock for their detail and clarity, had been repeatedly sidelined during key development meetings. Several engineers were reportedly stunned to discover that some of his simulator feedback had never been forwarded to the design team. Whether this was due to internal oversight or a subtle form of organizational favoritism remains unclear. But the effect was the same. A driver of historic caliber was being handed a car fundamentally incompatible with his technical requirements, and told to adapt, not collaborate. This type of friction is not new in Formula One. Throughout history, top-tier drivers have clashed with teams over engineering priorities. What makes this case different is the level of evidence backing Jamilton's concerns, and the fact that it is happening at Ferrari, a team long accused of valuing image over innovation. The quiet hero worship of Leclerc, whose rise within the team has been framed as both natural and inevitable, has created a power dynamic where dissent, even when factual, is treated as disruptive. And Jamilton, known for his analytical mind as much as his speed, is not someone who raises alarms without cause. In the public eye, fans are beginning to split. Some remain loyal to the team's legacy and see Jamilton's outburst as a symptom of adaptation challenges. But a growing chorus is demanding answers. Why is the most experienced and decorated driver on the grid being asked to accept inferior setups, while younger teammates enjoy tailored engineering support? The fact that these questions are even being raised speaks volumes. Because when Luis Jamilton chooses to speak out, he is not just expressing frustration. He is exposing a system that, quietly and consistently, has chosen comfort over confrontation. The revelations continued to ripple through the paddock as additional whispers emerged from within Ferrari's Maranello base. Several insiders confirmed that during the off-season, a heated exchange took place between Luis Jamilton and the senior technical director, centered around the allocation of developmental resources for the SF-veinticinco. While Leclerc was reportedly given dedicated sessions in the simulator to fine-tune the chassis setup to his liking, Jamilton's simulator time was frequently rescheduled, delayed, or cut short. In a sport where milliseconds matter, these decisions are not just administrative, they are performance-defining. The quiet favoritism being shown toward Leclerc was no longer deniable. This level of internal imbalance raised serious concerns about the integrity of the team's vision. As one engineer anonymously confessed, the car is fast, but it is fast for one type of driver. Luis has had to drive around problems instead of through them. The implication was staggering. The team's flagship vehicle, backed by hundreds of millions in investment and global prestige, was being tailored with a singular profile in mind. Such strategic short-sightedness is especially reckless when one considers Jamilton's immense capacity to deliver under pressure, something he has demonstrated time and again across different teams, regulations, and eras. Adding to the tension was Jamilton's growing frustration with race engineers who, according to audio analysis, have occasionally failed to relay real-time data with the same urgency or clarity afforded to Leclerc. These disparities in communication, however subtle, can make a critical difference when executing tire strategies, managing brake temperatures, or anticipating sudden track evolution. This is not about technical incompetence. It is about subtle shifts in tone, timing, and trust. For Luis Jamilton, a driver whose entire legacy is built on precision and intuition, such lapses are unacceptable. The silence from Ferrari leadership has been deafening. As fan forums light up with speculation and former drivers weigh in cautiously on television panels, there remains no formal acknowledgement of the internal disparities. Instead, the team continues to present a united front in media briefings, speaking in vague terms about developmental directions and driver adaptability. But no amount of PR polish can erase the fact that Jamilton's warnings are rooted in truth. And that truth is beginning to show cracks in Ferrari's carefully constructed narrative. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere within Ferrari has reportedly grown tense, with certain senior personnel voicing concern over how Luis Jamilton's statements could disrupt team morale. However, it is not the driver's honesty that has shaken the foundation. It is the uncomfortable truth that those comments reflect. Data collected over the past few weeks not only supports Jamilton's observations, but paints an even more alarming picture. Aerodynamic inconsistencies that Luis flagged during testing, especially regarding the rear-end instability at high-speed corners, were initially downplayed by the technical team. Yet wind tunnel figures now confirm that the SF-veinticinco generates an uneven downforce balance between left and right yaw transitions, something that Leclerc's driving style seems to adapt to more naturally, while Jamilton's precise corner entry technique exposes. What makes this revelation even more damning is that Luis Jamilton had raised this issue months earlier. requesting a recalibration of the suspension setup and suggesting minor alterations to the floor design. His suggestions, based on telemetry overlays and years of championship-winning experience, were reportedly not prioritized. Instead, the team chose to continue developing along a line that benefited Leclerc, creating what some in the engineering department now call the silent divide. While teams are no strangers to optimizing setups for individual drivers, this situation crosses into strategic favoritism when one of the most experienced and successful drivers on the grid is sidelined in key technical conversations. This subtle sidelining has led to unintended consequences. Jamiltón, known for his meticulous feedback and relentless work ethic, has begun limiting his simulation sessions. Not out of protest, but due to diminishing returns. "What is the point?" one of his close confidants remarked, "if the setup notes are going into a drawer instead of into the car?" This erosion of trust is not just a personal matter, it is a strategic failure. By alienating the driver who brought them some of their most promising development feedback, Ferrari risks not only internal harmony, but also technical innovation. Every great team thrives on honest dialogue between driver and engineer. But here, the lines of communication appear to have been strained to their limits. As this tension becomes harder to mask, the broader Formula Uno community has started paying attention. Analysts are questioning whether Ferrari's culture has fully adapted to the modern era, or if they are still caught in a cycle of managing egos rather than maximizing potential. The quiet efficiency that once defined Jamiltón's partnerships with past teams now contrasts starkly with the political undertones of his current environment. The result is a driver who is not just managing a machine, but navigating a minefield. As whispers of dysfunction grow louder, it becomes increasingly difficult for Ferrari to maintain the illusion of unity. Inside the paddock, sources close to the team have revealed that Luis Jamiltón has held a series of private discussions with technical director Enrico Cardiel, in which he laid out a detailed breakdown of the SF-veinticinco's flaws, complete with overlays, thermal imaging, and GPS comparisons from both his and Leclerc's laps. The evidence was staggering. Not only did it show that Jamiltón was experiencing greater tire degradation and lower rear-end grip, but it also highlighted that the updates being funneled through the car favored one driving style over another, specifically Leclerc's tendency to be more aggressive mid-corner. Jamiltón's smoother, more predictive technique was being punished by a chassis that simply would not cooperate. What made this revelation even more explosive was that several engineers, under condition of anonymity, admitted that development paths were skewed based on internal simulations built, using Leclerc's data as the default. This approach effectively marginalized any feedback that deviated from his profile, turning Jamiltón's contributions into outliers rather than essential variables. In a team that once prided itself on data-driven development, such bias raises serious concerns. It suggests a structural problem, one where politics and internal loyalties interfere with the pursuit of raw performance. While Luis Jamiltón has not made these concerns public in a direct statement, his tone in recent interviews has become notably sharper. During a debrief last week, he spoke about feeling disconnected from the direction of the car, a phrase that struck many as uncharacteristically open. For someone known for his discretion and diplomatic phrasing, the weight of those words was unmistakable. The message was clear. He sees the problem, he has offered solutions, and he is being ignored. This communication breakdown has reached a tipping point. The lack of alignment between Jamiltón and his engineering team risks not only performance on the track, but morale inside the garage. Several longtime members of Jamiltón's support staff, including key race engineers who followed him from his previous team, have reportedly clashed with senior figures at Ferrari over how his feedback is handled. In one incident, described by insiders as tense, a meeting ended with a frustrated Jamiltón walking out after being told that the current path was sufficient. But in the world of Formula Uno, sufficient is not good enough, especially not for someone with Luis Jamiltón's pedigree. He did not join Ferrari to be a background figure. He came to lead, to build, and to win. If that vision is being undermined from within, then the consequences will ripple far beyond one season. They will define the legacy of this partnership, and perhaps lead to its early unraveling. The tension between Luis Jamiltón and Ferrari's technical hierarchy has now reached a level that can no longer be hidden behind closed doors or diluted with corporate messaging. While the team continues to issue carefully worded press releases insisting on internal harmony and constructive collaboration, the reality behind the scenes paints a very different picture. According to several insiders who have worked closely with both drivers, Jamiltón has grown increasingly isolated within the development loop, his data reviewed but rarely prioritized. And in a sport where milliseconds are mined for microscopic tweaks, this kind of selective attention can mean the difference between dominance and defeat. One particularly troubling account, corroborated by two different team sources, involves a recent simulator session in Maranello. Jamiltón reportedly requested to test a series of rear suspension configurations that he and his personal performance engineer believed could offer better rotation stability under braking, an area where he has consistently struggled with the SF-veinticinco. The request was initially greenlit, but then mysteriously delayed for over a week. When the session finally happened, the configurations were incomplete and missing key telemetry logging tools, making the test effectively useless. The official explanation? A software scheduling oversight. But for someone of Jamiltón's experience, the pattern was becoming too consistent to ignore. These events are not merely technical hurdles. They are signals of a deeper cultural divide. Jamiltón represents a philosophy rooted in driver-led development, adaptability, and long-term evolution. Leclerc, while immensely talented, has been molded into the symbol of Ferrari's youth-focused project. Quick, marketable, and loyal. The garage floor reflects that divide. Several mechanics, when interviewed off the record, confess that a preference exists. One that trickles down from top management and influences everything from allocation of updated components to which driver's car receives real-time telemetry support during test runs. If favoritism is infecting a team that claims to operate with precision and equality, the implications are serious. Jamiltón, who made a historic move to Ferrari with the belief that he would shape a new era, now finds himself playing catch-up in a system that was never built for him to thrive. And what is more alarming is how deliberate some of the marginalization appears to be. In one case, a suspension component flagged by Jamiltón as inconsistent was reportedly approved and then installed on Leclerc's car with modifications, validating Jamiltón's feedback, but never acknowledging it publicly. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. For a champion whose legacy is built not only on talent, but on precision, partnership, and trust, being systematically sidelined is not just frustrating, it is humiliating. Yet through it all, Luis Jamiltón has maintained a composed exterior, choosing his words carefully while letting his actions and data speak volumes. But how long can that patience last? And more importantly, what will happen if the internal resistance pushes him to make his frustrations public? The silence of Luis Jamiltón is growing louder by the day, and in a paddock that thrives on whispers and speculation, his restraint is not seen as a sign of compliance, but rather as a calculated prelude to something explosive. Those closest to the Siete Visas campion suggest that he is documenting everything: conversations, data inconsistencies, radio transcripts, and engineering requests. Why? Because Jamiltón is no stranger to political battles within a team, but this time, he is not simply fighting for victories. He is fighting for the legacy of his final chapter in Formula Uno. What few fans see is that behind the podium photos and media-friendly interviews, there exists a war of ideology inside Ferrari. A driver who was brought in to elevate standards is now being treated as an outsider, while a favored son, Leclerc, is nurtured and shielded. The internal divide is so profound that even during technical debriefs, Jamiltón's input is often scrutinized more harshly or deferred for further review, while Leclerc's feedback is implemented within days. This is not just about performance, it is about control. And now, with the SF-veinticinco under public scrutiny for its inconsistent behavior and controversial updates, Jamiltón has finally begun to make subtle but unmistakable moves. His remarks during engineering briefings have taken a sharper tone. He has started requesting cross-validation of team data with his personal telemetry team, an unprecedented step that signals a deepening mistrust. Even more telling is his decision to reduce media obligations and public appearances, a move many interpret as a sign that he is preparing to speak out in a controlled, impactful manner. What will happen if Jamiltón chooses to reveal everything? The favoritism, the silenced feedback, the ignored warnings. Will Ferrari deny it? Or will they attempt to control the narrative before the storm breaks? Either way, the groundwork is already laid. Jamiltón is not just a driver. He is a strategist, and he knows that sometimes the most powerful move is to wait until your adversary is completely unprepared. In a sport where everything is about control, precision, and power, Luis Jamiltón is about to remind everyone that real disruption does not always come with an engine roar. Sometimes it starts with a whisper, builds with data, and ends with a revelation that changes the course of a team forever. The only question now is, will Ferrari see it coming before it is too late?